Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please subscribe and keep watching for more detailed videos. Steffy never expected to see what she saw. Not here, not like this, and certainly not involving two people whose paths were never supposed to cross so closely. One moment, she was focused on her own thoughts, trying to steady herself after yet another emotionally exhausting day, and the next, she caught a glimpse that made her stop cold. Taylor and Deacon, standing far closer than casual conversation would ever require. Their body language wasn't loud, wasn't obvious, but it was intimate in a way that only someone who knew both of them well would recognize. A softened tone, a lingering look, a pause that spoke volumes without a single word being said. Steffy didn't announce herself. She didn't interrupt. Instead, she did what years in the Forrester family had trained her to do. She observed. She listened. She took mental notes. Because when something feels off, it usually is. And this felt very off. Taylor looked different. Not just calm, but emotionally present in a way Steffy hadn't seen in a long time. There was no guarded therapist posture, no emotional armor. And Deacon, of all people, seemed grounded, not scheming, not defensive, just open. Too open. And that's what worried Steffy the most. She watched as Taylor smiled, not the polite kind, but the kind that reaches the eyes. Deacon responded in kind, his voice low, his expression sincere. Whatever they were talking about, it wasn't small talk. This was personal, maybe even vulnerable. And vulnerability in this family was dangerous. Steffy pulled back before she could be seen, her heart racing with questions. Since when did Taylor trust Deacon sharp enough to let her guard down? And why now? Of all times, with Sheila still lurking like a shadow over every corner of their lives, this was the last complication they needed. Because if there was one thing Steffy knew for certain, it was that Deacon's past never stayed buried. And anything connected to Sheila never ended quietly. As Steffy tried to process what she'd witnessed, the image replayed in her mind. The way Deacon leaned in slightly. The way Taylor didn't step back. The way silence seemed to settle comfortably between them. It wasn't proof of anything concrete, but it was enough to spark alarm bells. And Steffy wasn't someone who ignored her instincts. Meanwhile, across town, Sheila Carter was spiraling. The walls were closing in, and for once, she felt it. The freedom she'd clawed for, manipulated for, and nearly destroyed lives to protect was slipping through her fingers. People were watching her more closely. Lee was watching her. And Sheila knew better than anyone that Lee Finnegan wasn't someone to underestimate. Lee had already made it clear she wanted Sheila nowhere near Finn, nowhere near Hayes, and nowhere near Steffy. But now something has shifted. Lee wasn't just angry anymore. She was strategic, calculated. And that terrified Sheila more than outright rage ever could. Desperate times called for desperate moves, and Sheila found herself doing something she never thought she'd do. Reaching out, asking for help, sending an SOS not to an ally, but to someone who had every reason to despise her. Lee. The message wasn't dramatic. Sheila knew better than to overplay her hand. It was short, careful, almost restrained. She hinted at danger. At shared interests. At a looming threat that could hurt everyone involved if left unchecked. She didn't beg. She didn't confess. She simply planted the idea that she and Lee might, be on the same side of something bigger. When Lee read the message, her reaction was immediate and intense. Anger flared first. The nerve. The audacity. Sheila Carter reaches out as if they were equals, as if years of pain, manipulation, and trauma could be brushed aside with a carefully worded text. Lee's first instinct was to delete it, to pretend it never happened. But she didn't. Because buried beneath the manipulation, Lee sensed something else. Fear. Real fear. And Sheila Carter only acted out of fear when she believed she was truly cornered. That alone made the message dangerous. Lee knew Sheila was capable of lying about anything. But she also knew Sheila's patterns. And this felt different. Less like a trap, more like a last resort. That didn't make Sheila trustworthy. It made her unpredictable. As Lee weighed her options, Steffi confronted her own dilemma. She couldn't shake the image of Taylor and Deacon together. The idea gnawed at her. Taylor had been through enough heartbreak, enough disappointment. Deacon represented a risk, one that could easily spiral out of control, especially given his history with Sheila. That connection alone was enough to make Steffi's stomach turn. Eventually, Steffi decided she couldn't stay silent. She approached Taylor later, carefully, casually, as if she were just checking in. But her eyes searched her mother's face, looking for clues, for cracks, for confirmation of what she feared. Taylor noticed immediately. Mothers always do. Steffi didn't accuse. She didn't interrogate. She simply asked how Taylor was feeling, how she was adjusting, whether she felt supported. Taylor answered honestly, but selectively. She spoke about growth, about forgiveness, about letting go of old pain. And every word, while sincere, only deepened Steffi's concern. Because forgiveness was one thing. Entanglement was another. Taylor mentioned Deacon in passing, framing him as someone who had also changed, someone trying to be better. Steffi kept her expression neutral, but inside, she was screaming. Changed or not, Deacon was still tied to Sheila. And Sheila was still a threat. Across town, Lee made a decision. She didn't respond to Sheila's message directly. Instead, she began asking questions. Quiet ones. She dug into recent movements, recent conversations, recent shifts in Sheila's behavior. And the more she uncovered, the clearer it became that Sheila was feeling pressure from multiple sides. Someone was onto her. Or she believed they were. Lee realized that ignoring Sheila completely might be a mistake. Not because Sheila deserved help, but because information was power. And Sheila, cornered and afraid, might slip. Sheila, meanwhile, paced back and forth, checking her phone obsessively. No reply. No acknowledgement. Nothing. The silence was torture. She hated meeting anyone, especially Lee. But she hated being vulnerable even more. Still, she couldn't undo what she'd done. The message was out there. And now, all she could do was wait. The tension between these storylines was invisible but undeniable. Steffi's growing suspicion. Taylor's quiet emotional shift. Deacon's steady presence. Sheila's fear. Lee's calculated silence. Every piece was moving, she told him what she'd slowly seen, but deliberately, how it made her feel, why it explosive. scared her. Finn listened carefully, torn between loyalty to his wife and the complicated truth of his own family history. He understood Steffi's fear. He shared it. Because if Taylor and Deacon grew closer, Sheila would inevitably find a way to insert herself. She always did. Finn urged caution, not confrontation. He knew pushing Taylor too hard could backfire. But Steffi wasn't sure she could sit back and watch. She'd already lost too much to Sheila's chaos. She wasn't willing to risk her mother becoming collateral damage. Lee, on the other hand, finally broke her silence. Not with warmth. Not with reassurance. Just a brief response to Sheila's message. A single line that made Sheila's breath catch. What do you think you know? That was all it took. Sheila smiled, a mix of relief and anticipation spreading across her face. The door wasn't open yet, but it wasn't closed either. And Sheila knew how to wedge herself into even the smallest opening. As all of this unfolded, Deacon remained blissfully unaware of the ripple effects his connection with Taylor was causing. To him, the bond felt healing, redemptive, a chance to be seen as more than his past mistakes. He didn't realize that every step closer to Taylor pulled him deeper into a web he might not be able to escape. And Taylor, despite her intelligence and experience, was allowing herself something rare. Hope. I hope that people can change. I hope that peace is possible. Hope that this chapter of her life wouldn't be defined by chaos. But hope in this world often comes at a cost. Steffi watched. Lee calculated. Sheila plotted. And somewhere in the middle, lines were blurring, loyalties were shifting, and secrets were tightening their grip. What Steffi witnessed that day wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of something that could change everything. And once these forces collided, there would be no undoing the damage. Come back to our channel for all your updates. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel.